Your thumb touches the screen. The phone unlocks. You call it yours. But your fingerprint is not the real lock. A receipt proves you bought it. A password keeps strangers out. Cameras record theft. Police and courts make the word mine enforceable. Now remove that entire system. No receipt. No locked apartment. No police to call. If someone stronger takes the phone from your hand, what is left of ownership? Now move tens of thousands of years into the past to a low rock shelter above southern India's Jurreru Valley. The land below is dry and open. Food, water, and usable ground will not remain equally reliable forever. A camp that works today may become a dangerous place to stay later. At dusk, hunters drag a carcass toward the fire. One hunter landed the decisive strike, but someone shaped the stone edge. Someone read the tracks. Others helped carry the animal home. Hungry people watch the first cut. So who owns the meat? The hunter? The weapon maker? The hunting party? Or everyone whose survival depends on the camp? There is no court beside the fire. The answer exists only if the group accepts. So why would people who depended on tools ever hate possession? The obvious answer is, wait, mobile people could not carry a house full of objects across a dry landscape. Every extra kilogram demanded more calories, more water, and more time. But weight cannot be the whole answer. At Jwalapuram Locality 9, in the Jurreru Valley, archaeologists found carefully made stone tools, worked bone, and small beads. These people invested labor in objects worth keeping. Some possessions were tiny enough to carry almost anywhere. So, the most dangerous weight of a possession was not always on the back. Sometimes it sat between people. Archaeology cannot recover the exact ownership rules used at Jurreru, but later, mobile foragers show how complex ownership could become in societies without courts or police. And one documented rule sounds almost deliberately unfair. A hunter could risk his life, make the kill, and still not control how the meat was divided. Among the Juhoansi of southern Africa, the first right to distribute a large kill did not always belong to the hunter who killed, could belong to the owner of the arrow. That arrow might have been borrowed, exchanged, or owned by a woman who never joined the hunt. So a hunter could loose a poisoned arrow, track the wounded animal for hours or days, help carry the carcass home, and then watch someone else begin dividing the meat. To modern ears, that sounds absurd, but ownership did not mean keeping the whole animal. It meant deciding the first division. From there, meat moved through relatives and households in repeated waves. The hunter's skill mattered, but the kill did not automatically become his private victory. The arrow did more than bring down the animal. It separated the person who succeeded from complete control over the result. That solved one problem. It did not solve the hunter's ego. A man who repeatedly returned with meat could begin to see himself as more important than the people waiting beside the fire. That was when the group did something even stranger. The larger the kill, the more they insult. Among the Juhoansi, a successful hunter was expected to play down what he had done. Others might inspect the animal and complain, too thin, too old, hardly enough meat to justify sharpening a knife. The hunter knew they were exaggerating. So did everyone else. This was not a verdict on the meat. It was pressure on the man. Today, success brings applause, promotions, and followers. Here, success could bring a public roasting. Before dinner, the group valued a capable hunter. What it resisted was allowing repeated success to harden into permanent rank. A large kill could feed everyone. It could also tempt one person to imagine that everyone now stood below. So the contribution was accepted while the ego was cut back down to size. They did not insult the meat because the hunter had failed. They insulted it because he had succeeded. The arrow limited control over the kill. The mockery limited what success could do to status. But a third puzzle remained. Why spend time making a valuable object, then deliberately give it away? Among the Juhoansi, one network of delayed gift exchange was called Hxaro. It was not ordinary barter. A bead, an arrow, or a piece of clothing left your hands. The return gift might arrive much later with no fixed deadline and no need to match the original value exactly. The exchange remained unfinished. So did the relationship. When researchers documented Hxaro in 1974, the average person maintained about 15 partnerships. Some partners lived only a few kilometers away. Others lived as far as 200 kilometers away. People spent, on average, more than 4 months of the year staying with Hxaro partners. That is the strange reversal. A bead kept inside a pouch remained a bead. A bead given away marked a person, a relationship, and potentially another place where you might be received when local conditions turned against. Modern wealth feels safest when it stays under your control. Hxaro could create security after the object left your control. The safest person was not necessarily the one sitting beside the largest pile. It could be the person whose relationships reached far beyond the camp. In that sense, wealth was stored inside other people. But Hxaro was not a perfect system of equal repayment. One relationship might give more. Another might return less. Some weak connections survived anyway. That sounds inefficient, only if every exchange is judged alone. This was not one loan between two people. It was a network. One connection could fail without destroying every other option. People still remembered patterns. Complaints, teasing, and gossip could pressure someone who repeatedly damaged cooperation, but there was no accountant demanding that every bead return with interest. The network tolerated uneven exchange because life itself was One season favored one camp. The next favored another. Private pile protected what you already had. A wide network protected you when the pile was no longer enough. And that brings us back to the Jurreru Valley. The rock shelter preserves stone tools, beads, and worked bone, objects into which people invested time and skill. What it cannot preserve is the mourning. A camp had to decide whether to remain or move. So imagine the decision. Nearby resources are becoming unreliable. The group can carry its possessions, abandon them, or leave some behind, and gamble on returning. None of those choices is free. Finished tool contains hours of labor. A familiar shelter contains work already complete. A bead may carry memory, identity, or a relationship that cannot simply be remade from another stone. Every valued object creates one more reason to delay, but relationships change the calculation. Someone with trusted partners elsewhere may have another camp that will receive. Someone whose security sits entirely beside the fire has much more to lose by leaving. That is the moment private property becomes a public cost. If one person asks everyone to wait, share the load, or return later, the whole group is being asked to pay for one person's attachment. One person owns the pile. Everyone else pays for the delay. A tool cannot offer a destination. A pile cannot welcome its owner into another. The danger was not simply that possessions made movement slower. It was that possessions could make a dangerous place feel safe, then abandoning what had been built. Now the three strange customs make sense. The hunter made the kill, but did not automatically control the meat. The successful man was mocked before success could become a crown. And the valuable object became useful in a new way after it left the owner's hand. These practices do not prove that people at Jurreru followed the same rule. They reveal the wider problem mobile human groups had to solve. Useful things had to remain useful without turning into lasting personal power. Modern institutions can enforce ownership even when the people around us disapprove. In a small mobile group, ownership depended far more directly on relationships, reputation, and continued cooperation. You could keep the object and lose the people who made it valuable. That was why possessions could become hated, not because every object was heavy, because an object could become leverage. They did not hate the spear. They hated the crown it could become.